and welcome to Series 2 of my podcast Innervation, where we get to hear stories and experiences of incredible women in science and technology. Not only will you get insights into some fascinating innovations, but you may also even relate to their stories, especially if you're a little unconventional or non-conforming. As with all science and tech, what these women do for a living has a real impact on all of our lives, whether we realise it or not. But here on Innervation, I'm also giving women a platform for them to be heard and for us to be inspired and uplifted by what they've learned along their life's journeys, both personally and professionally. This week, I talked to Lisa Jane Cook, a refrigeration engineer.
I'm Lisa Jane Cook. I'm a refrigeration engineer working with GEA. And I'm also a trustee at the Institute of Refrigeration and a director at ACRIB, which is the UK Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Industry Board.
Wow. So Lisa, why refrigeration engineering?
It's not actually something that I chose to do. I fell into it. And this is something that I found quite frequently when I've spoken to other female engineers, is that we don't go through school and education thinking that we want to do engineering, and specifically refrigeration. It's just something that I had an opportunity to join a company. They invested their time in me and educated me, and now it's something that I absolutely thoroughly enjoy, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
So did you go through the typical sort of academic route, or did you do things differently?
So for me, I actually trained as a computer programmer when I left college. I got an apprenticeship actually with a building services company. So I already had a bit of an introduction into engineering and building services. But they lost a major contract. And so a large proportion of their staff were made redundant. And it was at that point a job had come up at a local refrigeration company in the drawing office. I didn't have any drawing experience and I didn't have any engineering background at that point, but my mum was an engineer and she worked in a drawing office. So she encouraged me. She's, sort of said, just go for the interview, see if you can get the position, and then I'll teach you evenings and weekends how to use CAD and how to draw. And I was really lucky. They took a chance on me, and that was the start of my career in refrigeration. I was with them for almost 2 years, and then a company up the road approached me and basically offered me an apprenticeship to go back through to college and retrain again in building services engineering this time. So that's sort of how I got into it, and my route into where I am now is it was an apprenticeship route rather than a sort of a normal higher education route.
That is so amazing. My jaw just hit the floor when you said your mum is an engineer. Like, tell me about that.
She was a little bit different, I suppose. I think that's probably where I'm lucky. And that's, again, another thing that I found speaking to lots of other female engineers, is that they had a strong role model growing up, another female, and it wasn't always a mum, it might have been an auntie or a friend, but someone else that works in engineering that they could look up to and think, well, wow, you're doing something you really love and it's really, really different. So my mum, when she left school, she went to train I think it was like a civil service type establishment. And that's where she got into what she was doing. But she did lots of different engineering, but she was an electrical engineer, so a little bit different from myself working on the water side.
I get the impression that it doesn't seem that abnormal to you that you're a woman in engineering, or is it?
I suppose things are changing. I think, though, for me, the confidence that I had and the way that I went after it was down to my mum. Because if you imagine back in the 70s, she really was in the minority then. There really weren't that many women doing it. And because of the type of work she was doing electrical engineering, but she was working with the Ministry of Defence. So a lot of the things she was doing was top secret. So there really weren't any other women doing that at that time. And I think that gave me the confidence and the belief in myself, the encouragement that she gave me to say, you can do anything that you want. And like I said, I didn't want to do engineering. When I was at school, I trained from the age of 5 actually as a classical musician, and all I ever wanted to do was music. I wanted to travel the world and play. But because my mum was an engineer, and obviously there's a certain skill set that goes with that, and my dad was also an engineer and my 2 grandfathers engineers as well. And so I think there's just something in the family that we have a natural gift for maths and science. So it was more about following my strengths, and then I found from that something that I thoroughly enjoyed. So I don't know. No, I don't think it is. And like I say, things are changing now. We've definitely got a lot more women in engineering, and so it's becoming easier by the day to actually really thrive in this environment.
So have you felt that we need to encourage women in engineering, or do you think it's just natural the way things are?
No, I do think we need to encourage them. Something that I've learned from the STEM ambassador work that I'm doing is that there are still a lot of young children, and I'm teaching a lot of primary classes, that don't think this is a job for women, and they just don't understand. And I've had quite a few say, well, you can't be an engineer because you're a girl. And it's about going out there and changing those stereotypes, those beliefs, and showing everybody. And we're not focusing just on women by being a woman in engineering going into school. I want all of the children to know that there are opportunities for them, and if it's something they really enjoy, if they love the maths and the science and doing the hands-on experiments, there's an opportunity for them to do that as a career, and to find something they really love and enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you had both your mum and your dad as engineering role models. I myself had my dad as an engineering role model, and he still is. But what is the definition of an engineer for you?
For me, it's about someone who finds solutions. It's an innovator. So, it doesn't necessarily need to be a particular field. You can be an innovator in so many different fields. And like I say, for me, it's about solutions. And the work that I do these days is not so much focused on just refrigeration. It's about sustainability. So it's about looking at a process and working backwards, and then trying to find areas where we can improve that process for the better. And I've been lucky enough to be involved in some really amazing projects recently where they're carbon neutral, because we've managed to capture waste heat from the refrigeration process and use that somewhere else, completely removing the need for boilers. And then we've used solar and wind for the energy. So it's, there's so many opportunities. And for me, like I say, it's about innovation.
Yeah, because I mean, not only do young kids not have role models as engineers, particularly role models that break the stereotype, but there's also kind of like a confusion around what engineers actually are. And I don't even think it's worldwide. I think there's a confusion in the UK because engineers seem to be more like grease monkey type of roles. But like in other countries, even as close as Europe, engineers are really highly respected. What has been your experience of engineering?
Actually, that is something that I've written about in the past, is that quite often when you talk to people about engineering, they do immediately think that you spend your day in overalls and you're greasy and completely covered in dirt. And yes, there are days like that, because you need to be able to go to a site or to a process and really get into it to understand it. So yeah, some days I have got my hair in a messy bun with a hard hat on top, and I come home filthy. But most of the time it is about that innovation. So it's thinking about those processes. But I would agree, like I say, it does seem to have that. And I don't think engineers in this country are given the respect that they are in other countries. I think you're very right about that. Definitely.
I think another myth is that to go into engineering, you've got to be really good at maths and physics. Is that true?
No, I don't think so. Again, either, because as I said, I did an apprenticeship and I didn't go through sort of a standard sort of higher education route. And maybe that was because I wasn't as strong in those subjects as other people. I've got friends that went through and now are doctors of mathematics, some really amazing minds. And I'm under no illusions that my mind is as brilliant as theirs, but it's not all about that. It is about your thought process and that desire to want to understand. Firstly, I suppose, is picking things apart, and to then have that drive to make something better. And I think this is something that's really important, where this diversity and inclusion comes in, is because obviously everybody has a different view, and just because somebody isn't as strong at one thing as you, they have other talents and something else to offer. It's when we all get together that we can make things better.
To describe to me your typical day at work.
It's actually quite busy. So sort of I normally start sort of 8:30, 9 o'clock, and it'll be going through emails and picking up any issues. We manage a large number of sites for mostly food processors in the UK, but some pharmaceutical as well. And obviously with COVID and things the way they have been over the last 12 months, those processes have been put under a lot of strain. So most mornings are spent looking at any issues that might have happened overnight and coordinating our sort of on the ground engineers to go out and deal with those issues. I spend some time doing design work and reviewing processes. There might be a few hours in a day where I'll be looking for the next product that we need to sort of bring into our portfolio, or how we can improve the products that we've got, improve the processes. And then there's also a bit of like customer facing work to be done as well. So I spend a lot of time talking to our clients to understand where they want to be in the future, because also part of that improvement process is you need to understand what they want and what their expectations are to be able to offer them the best solution. So it's quite a varied role. No 2 days are the same either.
And what's it like sort of being a woman in and amongst all of that?
I think, like you said, for me, it doesn't really faze me, but I think part of that's probably because I have had that strong role model, and also because I've been doing it for a long time. So in May this year, I would have been doing it for 22 years. So I'm almost sort of ingrained part of the industry. Everybody knows me. And, you know, I've spent a lot of time building relationships with people. And I suppose because I have done it for such a long time, and I've always been sort of told that I'm one of the boys, you know, I don't mind to have a bit of a laugh and, like I say, get dirty. I don't have an issue with that. And so I think because of that, it's just normal for me. It's like an everyday thing. Yeah.
Some women that I've talked to in STEM have had to sort of put their femininity to one side just so that they can be part of the team and not be singled out. Have you ever felt like you've had to sort of deny aspects of yourself so that you are accepted?
I think maybe in the beginning I was a little bit like that. When I went to college to do my BTEC through my apprenticeship, I was the only female, and there were times that the boys weren't very receptive to me, and they weren't willing to let me have a go at things because they were worried that I was going to mess it up and that I just, you know, I wouldn't have the ability to do it. But with my mum there in the background, sort of keep pushing me and that encouragement. For example, with refrigeration, we have to braze. So we braze copper pipes quite frequently to connect systems up. And the boys at college wouldn't let me do that. So my mum encouraged me to go and ask for some work experience. And I took a job in the factory at the company I was working at in the evening. So I'd work daytime in the office doing the design work, and then come 5 o'clock, I'd go and do 4 hours in the factory assembling the units. And that gave me that experience. So I suppose I went out and changed that situation for myself. It probably shouldn't have been like that, but it was a while ago, and I think things have changed now. I think that there are more girls. There's still not enough, but there are more girls in college, and we're seeing each year more and more women being nominated for the Top Apprentice of the Year awards, which is fantastic. Things are definitely changing, but yeah, there have been times where I've sort of felt, even like say going to college and maybe just not wearing what I wanted to wear because I felt like I couldn't. I went more in sort of like really baggy sort of jumpers and jeans and more relaxed. But like I say now, I don't feel like that anymore. I feel like, you know, everybody knows who I am. Like I say, and it's accepted that I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. So I suppose they've probably just got to lump it these days.
Do you know, it gives me goosebumps to think that you saw a gap, which was, you know, men not letting women do certain tasks, and the courage and the strength of character to just say, okay, I'm not being allowed to do something, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it myself, is just absolute gold dust. I mean, I that is so what women need to do. What was driving you? Like, what was going through your mind when you were accumulating skills, which, you know, if you had been a sort of like shrinking violet, you never would have got those skills. So what was kind of driving you?
I think part of it was the fact that they wouldn't let me do things, and because I knew that I had the ability to do it, and certainly academically with the written papers that we were doing that supported all the hands-on work, time after time I was coming out top of the class. So I knew that I had it here, that I just had to apply it. And because they didn't want me to do it, that almost I don't like being told that I can't do something. So that was probably my main driver, was like, right, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do better than you, just to prove you all wrong. You know, I can do just as well, if not better. And actually, yeah, when I finished my BTEC, I got a double distinction, and scooped the Governor's Award at the college that year, which the guys didn't like. But you know, that was my success then, my celebration for the efforts that I'd put in. And it wasn't easy. That's working evenings in the factory, going to college day release, and still having to do my full-time job as well. It was a really hard couple of years, but definitely worth it.
That is so inspiring. I mean, you're a change maker. Like, basically, you just smashed through all stereotypes and said, no, I want to do this. Were you driven by being told no, or were you driven by your passions for what you were doing?
It was probably a combination of both. Like I said, I don't like being told that I can't do something, and I always will try it. And I'm still doing it today. I for like the last 5 years, I've spent a lot of time weightlifting and learning how to do that. And it's the same sort of thing. I'm really petite. I'm only just 5 foot and a really small frame. Yeah, I'll still go into that gym and go into that free weights area. So that is part of it. But I do have a love of what I do. I just, like I say, every day is different, and it's that uniqueness of every day and that challenge that comes with every day. Like, I never know when I open my emails what I'm going to see. So it's part of that as well. I am very passionate about my industry, and that's definitely why I do the things that I do with the STEM as well. Like I said, because refrigeration we have a shortage of women in engineering as a whole, but refrigeration is a hidden industry. And I suppose the only thing that's really brought us forward in the last couple of years is COVID, because with the vaccination and the low temperatures, literally overnight, the number of inquiries and the interest in what we're doing just went through the roof, and we haven't stopped working like flat out since COVID happened. So
how do we get girls to see the beauty in engineering without them sort of shutting down because they think it's a boys' subject?
I suppose for me, that's where the STEM ambassador work comes in. I've only been doing it probably 2 years now, but actually being able to get in front of students, and I work with primary, senior, and I've done some work with universities as well, with the older children or pupils, just to talk to them and to talk about what we do is really valuable. But with the younger ones, is to do those hands-on experiments and to let them see how much fun that is, because I think once they've seen how much fun it is, they can then start to engage with the subjects. And I think, you know, it's really important for us to do that. But then I also think part of it is probably down to the parents as well. And I think that's maybe where I want to take it next, is to starting to make parents aware that there are these stereotypes, and we all do it. We all talk to our children about what they might want to be, or, you know, the things they might enjoy. And when you have a daughter, I suppose a lot of people would immediately think of those more sort of feminine roles. And it's essential that we as parents see what they have, like their natural like skills and abilities, and try and grow those. So it's for me, I think that's probably, like I say, where I want to take it next, is to start talking to parents and adults about how we teach our children about the opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I think schools push young minds in a certain direction. You know, it's very much about getting the grades and going to the best, you know, the schools on the league tables. And, you know, there's a lot of pressure to think a certain way, whereas engineering is very much about experimentation, having a go, prototyping, failing, you know, all of those things. Do you think those kinds of skills of like tinkering are important for going into a career like engineering?
I think having courage, so not giving up, is really important, because like you say, not everything goes right first time. And again, that's something that we teach in the STEM classes, is that not everybody's good at everything, and not everything goes right the first time. So we teach the children to work together and to recognise the skills that they have in each other. So, to get less caught up on the bits that you can't do, but look at to where you can help others and where they can help you. So I do think there is a part of that it needs to be there. Like you have to have, like I said, that courage to not give up. But I suppose it's difficult, isn't it? Because you might not recognize someone as a person that does a lot of tinkering as they're growing up, but it doesn't mean that that's not something that they won't enjoy. It's just that they've not had that opportunity to actually to do that yet. So it's a difficult one to answer until you really sort of give someone that opportunity to get on with it. I suppose that's things where like Lego and Meccano and those kind of educational toys come in, is to encourage your children, first of all, just, you buy a Lego set and you build the thing that it is, but then maybe get some books and look at other things that you can teach them and do those activities together.
Maybe that's why engineering is kind of on the rise, because we are living in an era now where people just have a go and they put that on social media and it goes viral. And, there's a lot more experimentation going on because people are finding platforms to have a voice. Whereas previously we all had to go down certain routes. And so people kind of like fell off the bandwagon because they were just not built for sort of experimentation. Because I do find now that a lot of people kind of just go on YouTube and find a video about something if they're curious about something, which I think is a really good thing. How important is collaboration in what you do in engineering?
I think it's really important. Like I said, everybody's got their own unique skill sets and we've all got slightly different areas of expertise. For me, for example, because I worked in airside product design, I know the ins and outs of that one small component, which, forms part of this bigger system. We've got other people that specialised in pumps, and we've got other people that actually specialise just in that vapour compression cycle. And to make it the very best possible solution, we do all need to work together. So I think it is really, really important. But equally, I think you need that ability to go off and work on your own at times as well. So you've got to be sort of well balanced.
And how have you found being a woman, i.e. being in a minority, when you are sort of like in those team type scenarios? Like, do you have any top tips for like holding your own in those situations?
I suppose, the biggest one is probably just speaking out. So I've been in situations, one that really stands out for me was on a rooftop in London looking at a unit that wasn't quite performing the way it was supposed to be performing. And a man came up to me and just said, "Are you all right, love? Do you know what you're doing?" And I felt like saying, "No, I think I'm just going to switch it off and see what happens." And, you do get a lot of people thinking, well, is she here to make the coffee or is she just here to take the notes? And the amount of times I get asked to minute meetings and I'll just say, hang on a minute, I don't mind doing it, but I'm not going to do it next time. And it's about having that strength to say, yes, everybody should have a turn at this. I will minute the meeting this time, or, I'll sit back and let other people speak. But you do need to hold your own. You need to have that confidence that when you're the expert in that area, to actually speak up, and maybe not even when you're the expert, but like I said, it's all about innovation. So it's about sharing your ideas. And if you've got an idea, I don't think any idea is a stupid idea, to put those ideas forward. But I guess for me, I suppose it's the confidence that's grown over the years, and I have had some personal development and coaching with very different sort of like people, and I've got a mentor in the industry as well, and so over the years that confidence has grown. But yeah, no, definitely you do need to sort of accept that you do know what you're doing and to not doubt your own abilities and your knowledge.
You're reminding me of the exhaustion of having to do all that. What has stopped you from throwing in the towel?
That's quite a difficult question. I suppose some of it is the fact that I really do love my industry, and that I have, let's say, it's almost 22 years, so I've done it for a long time. The fact that I've spent these 22 years building up that knowledge. So I suppose part of it would be a fear of having to start something completely new and start all over again, because I've reached a point where I do know a fair amount, and it's, every day is about learning more, but I've already got that base knowledge. And then I suppose the other aspect of it is the fact that, I provide for my family and I am a role model to my children. So that would be the other part of it, is to teaching them work ethics and to not give up on the things that they want in their own lives.
So tell me, what do you love about refrigeration? Sell it to me.
I love the fact that it's constantly changing. Things sort of go round and round, and at the moment, with the move for sort of a greener future and the way that everybody's focused on the environment, we use less and less gases that are damaging to the ozone layer and global warming potentials. And through that, we've seen things go full circle. So sort of 100 years ago, ammonia was the refrigerant of choice, and a lot of people moved away from that because if there's ammonia leaks, it's not very nice for people. People can end up in hospital, or even worse, losing their lives. But the fact is that it's one of the better refrigerants, like performance wise and for the environment. It doesn't deplete the ozone layer, and the global warming potential is zero as well. So it's a brilliant refrigerant to have. So I suppose that's part of it, is the fact that it's constantly changing, and we've seen a lot of changes in refrigerants. We've seen a lot of changes in law, so things about energy usage, safety of products, so even sort of like strengthening of systems and pipework, valves, everything. Things have become more and more tight, which means that we are constantly having to rethink what we're doing and to go back to the drawing board and start all over again. So it's like not giving up, going back to the drawing board, go and test something else, improve it. And we have come a long way. Like I said, we've gone from systems where we would dump all the heat. So we would, refrigerate something, a process, a room, whatever it is, and just dump all that heat to atmosphere. And now we're taking that back and heating up water with it, which, like I say, we're getting rid of boilers now on systems, which is amazing. So it's that constant, like that challenge, that innovation, and actually just keeping up with everything as well. There's plenty of learning opportunities, and someone who likes to learn, it's a great environment for them to be in.
It is amazing, actually, because hot countries have fridges in their homes in the form of air conditioning units, and cold countries have refrigerators in their kitchens to keep food fresh. So there are very few people without some form of fridge. And to think about all of those people using a fridge of a certain type, like, add that all together, and the environmental impact is massive. And so your job must really be, about looking at that. So you're kind of like a warrior for a healthier climate.
Yeah, and I suppose in the older days where we had refrigerants that were damaging the environment, as that came to light, we were painted, I suppose, in a bad way as an industry that was destroying the world. But people don't realise how much refrigeration touches. So it isn't just like your refrigerators in your home and the food processes, it's all of industry. So from like blow molding and laser cutting to big ones like it's IT, obviously data centers and the internet. And that's actually a fantastic point to take into schools, because children really don't realize how much it touches everything in this modern world. But as soon as you say your phone wouldn't work or your laptop wouldn't work, they're just like, wow, okay, tell me more about this. So yeah, it really does touch everything. And like I say, it's still so much of a hidden industry. When you talk to people about refrigeration, they just immediately think you're a domestic fridge repair person. No one has any idea that pretty much everything in the modern world has refrigeration involved.
Yeah, that's really incredible. It was one of my favorite modules in mechanical engineering, is learning how a fridge works, because it's just so wonderfully simple.
It is.
But it can, as you say, be built up to really be very sophisticated, kind of closing the cycle and reusing a lot of the heat that's taken out. And so there's so many smart things that are still yet to be done in your industry, I guess.
Yeah, I can't wait to see where it goes. I've hopefully still got another 20-25 years to be here and see what happens in the future. I can't even imagine it. Like I say, everything's just come so far from when I joined to where we are now. It's incredible.
So on the sort of topic of lifelong projections and things, how has it been like fitting in motherhood and all the other aspects of being a woman whilst being in a very male dominated world?
It's not been easy. I have to say, haven't always had the most supportive colleagues. There's always someone who, just doesn't understand, either because they've got a partner or wife that stays at home to look after their children, or because perhaps they don't have children. And anybody who is a parent will know there are days where you'll get up and they'll just be ill, or something will go wrong and you just can't go to work. But we always manage to make it work, if that makes sense. When your children are ill, quite often they'll be quiet. So once you've settled them down, you can get on with your day-to-day work. It definitely wasn't easy when they were younger. But again, I was lucky enough to have an employer that understood that I wanted to breastfeed my children. So they gave me an office that I could go away to several times a day and just express the milk. So I was lucky enough to have that. But yeah, it definitely hasn't been easy, and I'm tired. I'm still tired a lot. My eldest is 15, almost 16, and my youngest is almost 12. So they are a lot easier to look after these days. But it's just, you've just got to keep going, I think, and just to not give up on your dreams because you're a parent. No one should have to give up on their dreams, and we don't expect a father to stop working, or to sort of take a break in their career and then perhaps accept that they'll never quite get to where they wanted to. And it should be the same for everybody should be able to have that break to have a family. And I think, again, things are changing. Definitely the changes in paternity leave and fathers being able to actually share some of that responsibility is a massive move forward, but I think there's still a lot that needs to be done as well.
You're such a fascinating woman, because with all of the stereotypes that you've smashed through, there seems to be this consistent attitude of, that's what I want, so I'm going to do it. However hard it gets, like you have such a strong sense of what you want. That's what's coming across. Do you think that's been an important factor in how your life has turned out?
Yeah, I think that sense of what I want, but I also think a big part of it is a sense of ownership and responsibility. So I can't blame anybody else for things that have happened in my life, and I'm the only one that can make things happen. So it is all down to me. You can't sit back and rely on other people to get you where you want to be. I suppose, like with the children, when I had my first, my husband wasn't working at the time. He'd left his job. He didn't enjoy it. So he quit when I was 8 months pregnant. So I only had 6 weeks off with my first child and continued to breastfeed him when I went back to work full time. And I think part of that is that sense of responsibility. I had a mortgage to pay. I had a child now to feed and clothe, and no one else was going to do that for me. So I suppose that is a big part, that I was brought up to take responsibility for the things that happen. And if something wasn't right, we were taught to challenge it and change it. So I think that's probably one of the bigger factors.
That's really, gosh, that's so profound. Just requires so much confidence and inner self-belief, which is kind of like blown my mind. I wonder how much of that is down to seeing your parents get on with things and do things their way and not necessarily fit convention. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that that does play a really major role in the way that I was, and I will go back to my mum time and time again. Obviously, sort of growing up in the 80s, things weren't brilliant. Mum and dad didn't have a lot of money. And I know they really struggled when we were young. For example, like we didn't have an iron or an ironing board. So my mum used to put the clothes under the carpet or under the seats. And my nan used to come every morning with breakfast because they couldn't afford the food. So my dad went to work during the day, and he worked at the local helicopter yard. So he's an electrical engineer as well. And then as soon as he came home, my mum would have tea prepared for us, and she would go to work in the evening. And I know she was exhausted. And I know my dad was exhausted as well, because he'd just done a full day in the yard, and then he would come home and have to take care of 2 daughters while his wife went off to work to make that extra bit of money. And it paid off in the end, because the work that my mum was doing and the things she was learning and the sort of skills that she was collecting enabled her to then apply for a job which had better salary. And at which point my sister and I were a little bit older as well, so that we could be left for a little bit of time. So there was a little gap at the end of the day that we would be okay on our own. And I suppose it is seeing my mum succeed, and the fact that, you know, mum and dad gave us everything that we had when we were young. You know, I just can never express enough appreciation for what they did. And I think that is part of it, is that, you know, I want to be able to offer my children the same. I want them to have the things that they need when they need them, and the very best experiences.
Wow, it really is like it's just so incredibly inspiring, and I can really hear your resilience. And yeah, it's admirable hearing, you know, how you've been formed to be the woman you are today. What advice then would you have for anyone going into engineering or STEM, maybe particularly girls?
Okay, so I'd definitely say don't give up, and, you know, don't let people tell that you can't do it. You can do it. You need to follow your dreams, and I'd say try a few different things as well, because you don't always find the right fit for you in the first place. So when I started in the industry, I was in the drawing office. Now, I still do drawings these days, but that's not the sort of bulk of my work. And while I enjoyed that, that wasn't really where I found my joy and my passion. And it was actually moving into the design side, so doing more of the math and, you know, sort of calculating how things are going to work and how the fluid's going to move through the system. That was actually where I found my joy. So don't always settle for the first, you know, opportunity. Have the strength to say that if something isn't right, that it's not right for you, and to move on. And I've even done that sort of later in my career, because I spent 18 years of that designing the airside products. And when I reached that 18th year, I sort of thought, well, it's getting very much the samey. And it's, you know, although I still love it, I've kind of lost that drive and that passion. I wasn't learning enough anymore. So I moved into complete system design. And God, that was so nerve-wracking, just to do that, just to walk away from something that you knew for so long. And although it is in the same industry, it's a different role. And actually, it's been brilliant for me, because my learning has now taken off again, and I've sort of opened myself up to a lot more opportunities, because I now know that if it's not right, I can just say, right, I'll just go and try something else, and you will find your fit and your place. So definitely don't give up. Don't let people tell you that you can't do something. Follow your dreams and just try different things. Find your place. There is a place for you.
Well, Lisa, it's just been incredible talking to you. Thanks for all that you give, because you give so much of yourself to STEM, to your family, to work. I just see this outpouring of just so much of what you have within that is of massive value. You just give, and it really, really, you know, I mean, I think being of service to other people is really what life is all about. And you have that in bucket loads. So thank you for being so inspiring, and for having this sort of presence about you that kind of is just very boosting. As a woman listening to you, I just feel extremely boosted. It's very much a sense of like, wow, if she can do all that, so can I. And I think, well, I hope my audience gets that same feeling too. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's been really nice to meet you. And it's nice to have the opportunity to share my story.
Thanks for listening, and please do subscribe to this podcast, and maybe even rate and review it if you can. The more ratings and reviews, then the more interest from those trusty algorithms, which could help to increase the reach of this show. And you can watch the video recording of this conversation on YouTube on my new series called Esteemed. It's all about self-discovery, self-evolution, and inclusivity on innovation. Let's all strive to be in the best versions of ourselves and celebrate others being themselves too. As always, be kind and loving, and I wish you all a great week.